The Zeril council chamber was silent. Rows of tall glass walls showed the side of their world outside. The sky was filled with strange light, and the oceans glowed with currents of energy. The storm had not yet touched the heart of their planet, but it was close. Every leader seated at the wide round table knew the truth. If no one came to help, their colonies would be lost one by one. Elder Sana, the voice of the council, looked around at the worried faces. She was calm by nature, but the lines around her eyes showed the weight she carried. "We have sent messages to the Union of Stars," she said slowly. "We have begged the Andari fleets. We have called to the Valen protectors." None answered. They all said the same. "The storm is too dangerous. They cannot risk their ships." A soft murmur passed through the room. Councillor Rill raised his hand. His voice shook as he spoke. "Then who will save us? Who can stand against such a storm? The colonies are breaking. Families are fleeing. Every day we lose more." No one spoke. The silence returned, heavy and painful. The Zeril were a gentle people, skilled in building gardens and great towers, but they had never learned to stand against harsh nature. Their ships were fine for trade, not for storms. Elder Sana stood and walked to the wide window. She watched the sky ripple like water. "There is one last path," she said at last. "One last signal we may send. But I fear the answer." The council leaned closer. "Who?" Rill asked. "The humans," she replied. The word felt heavy in the air. Several voices rose at once. "The Deathworlders? No. They are too wild. Too strange. Their world is a place of storms, heat, cold, and endless dangers. They are not like us. They are not like anyone." Sana raised her hand for silence. "Yes, they are different. But it is said they survive where others fall. It is said their ships endure what no other design can. If all others refuse, perhaps the humans will hear us. Perhaps they will come." Councillor Rill lowered his head. He had heard stories of humans too. Some said they laughed in the face of danger. Others said they built homes in deserts, on mountains, and even beneath seas. They were called Deathworlders because their home planet was one of the hardest places to live in the known galaxy. Yet they thrived. After a long pause, Rill nodded. "Send the call. If they refuse, we are no worse than before. If they accept, we may still have hope." The council agreed at last. Elder Sana touched the panel before her. A signal shaped with careful words was prepared. It was not a demand. It was not even a bargain. It was a plea. To the people of Earth, the message began, "We are the Zeril. Our colonies are falling to a storm we cannot control. We have asked others, and they have turned away. We do not know you, but we beg you. If you can hear, if you can come, please help us." The signal was sent across the void of space. For 3 long days, nothing returned. The Zeril lived with fear and silence. Ships carried more families away from the outer colonies, but many could not escape in time. The storm rolled on, tearing at the skies. On the 4th day, the council gathered again. Councillor Rill stood with tired eyes. "There is no answer. We should begin to plan for what remains. Perhaps some small part of us can endure." Before Elder Sana could reply, the chamber lights flickered. A clear tone rang across the room. The signal had found an answer. Every councillor turned to the center of the hall where the hollow projector lit up. The image was not Zeril, not Andari, not Valen. It was human. A strong face with sharp eyes and calm voice filled the chamber. "This is Admiral Ryan of the United Human Fleet," the figure said. "We have received your call. Your words reached us. You say no one will stand with you. Then we will. We cannot promise it will be easy. But we will come." The chamber was silent once more, but this time it was not silence of fear. It was silence of awe. Elder Sana lowered her head in respect. "They answered," she whispered. The Deathworlders answered. Outside the council chamber, the storm clouds rolled closer, but within, a new spark of hope began to shine. For the first time in many days, the Zeril felt they were not alone. And far away, across the stars, engines of the human fleet roared to life, setting course toward a people they had never met, ready to face a storm no one else dared to touch. Admiral Ryan stood on the wide bridge of the flagship Aurora. Around him, the hum of engines filled the air, steady and strong. His officers worked at their stations with focus, watching screens that showed the deep black of space. The message from the Zeril replayed again on the main display. Their voices had been filled with fear, yet also hope. They had asked for help when no one else had answered. Ryan listened once more, then turned to his crew. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. "You have heard their call. You know what they face. The choice is before us. Do we go, or do we stay?" Commander Hale, his second in command, stepped forward. "Admiral, the Council has not ordered us to act. No treaty binds us to them. If we go, it will be by our will alone." Ryan nodded. He knew the truth of it. Humans had often been called reckless by other races. They acted when others waited. They risked when others stood back. But that was also what made them different. He looked across the room at his officers. Our ships were built for storms. Our crews were trained for hard space. If we do not stand for them, then who will? They sent their message to us because all others turned away. I will not be the one to turn my back. The bridge was silent for a moment. Then slowly, heads began to nod. The choice was made. The humans would go. Across the fleet, orders spread quickly. Engines were checked. Supplies were loaded. Every ship was prepared for long travel into Zeril space. The fleet was not the largest in the galaxy, but it was known for one thing: endurance. Human ships were built not for comfort, but for survival. Where others failed, they held together. Word of their decision spread beyond the fleet. In distant stations and across trade routes, other species spoke in surprise. "The Deathworlders are moving," they said. "The humans go to meet the storm." Many shook their heads. "They will fall. None can stand against such force." But some watched with quiet wonder. Perhaps they will try. Perhaps they will do what no one else dares. On Earth, families of the crew sent short messages to their loved ones. A young pilot named Mara read one from her brother: "Be safe. You always run toward storms, but remember we wait for you at home." She smiled softly and folded the screen. She had chosen this life because she believed it mattered. Now she would prove it. Within days, the fleet was ready. The Aurora led the way, followed by ships both large and small. They left orbit and stretched into the endless dark. Engines lit the void with steady light as the humans crossed into the deep lanes of space. Admiral Ryan stood once more on the bridge as stars slid past in long streams. His thoughts were steady. He remembered the fear in the Zeril's message, and he knew what it meant. To call strangers for help was not easy. To admit weakness was harder still. For that reason alone, he could not fail them. Meanwhile, on the Zeril homeworld, Elder Sana and her council waited. Days passed as the storm grew stronger. Colonies at the edge were already failing. Whole families had lost their homes. Sana spent her nights watching the sky and wondering if the humans would truly come. Then, at last, a signal reached them. A human officer's voice filled their chamber. "This is the United Human Fleet. We are on our way. Hold fast." The council breathed with relief. The words were simple, but they carried strength. The news spread quickly through the Zeril cities. Fear still remained, but now there was also hope. Children asked their parents what humans looked like. Some painted pictures of great strong figures who held back storms with their hands. Others whispered that humans were fierce, yet kind. As the fleet drew closer, sensors began to pick up the storm's edge. Energy fields twisted like great waves in space. Screens flickered under the strain. Yet human ships pressed forward without slowing. On the bridge of the Aurora, Commander Hale studied the readings. "Admiral, the storm is stronger than we thought. It may reach the Zeral core in less than 2 cycles." Ryan's face remained calm. "Then we move faster. Signal the fleet. We are not too late." "We will not be too late." Engines surged with new power. Every ship tightened formation. The humans pushed forward, knowing that the hardest test still waited ahead. For the Zeral, it was the sound of hope. For the humans, it was the call of duty. And for the galaxy, it was the beginning of a story no one would forget. The Deathworlders were coming. The storm spread like a living sea across the dark of space. Its waves were not water, but clouds of glowing energy that stretched for millions of miles. Ships that tried to cross were torn apart by radiation, gravity shifts, and violent currents. Yet into that storm, the human fleet pressed forward. On the flagship Aurora, Admiral Ryan watched the readings as his officers worked quickly. The bridge lights flickered from the storm's pull, but the crew remained steady. Ryan turned to his navigator. "Hold our course. The Zeral worlds are ahead. We cannot falter now." The navigator's hands moved with calm precision. "Yes, Admiral." Holding steady. Hours later, the fleet reached the edge of the Zeral system. What they saw on their screens silenced even the most hardened officers. Planets glowed with strange light, their atmospheres torn by wild energy. Stations drifted off their paths, pulled by sudden shifts in gravity. A colony dome on one of the moons had already collapsed, its remains glowing faintly as the storm swallowed it. Commander Hale lowered his voice. "So this is what the others feared." Ryan's eyes remained fixed on the scene. "This is what we came for." The human fleet opened a signal to the Zeral homeworld. Within moments, Elder Sana and her council appeared in shimmering light across the Aurora's bridge. Their faces were filled with both fear and wonder. Elder Sana bowed her head. "You came. When all others refused, you came." Ryan answered with a steady voice. "We said we would. Now we must act quickly. The storm grows stronger. Tell us where your people are most in need." Sana explained how the outer colonies were breaking first. Whole stations were being lost to the storm. Many ships lacked power to escape. The humans listened carefully, then set their plan. Within the hour, the fleet split into groups. Some ships moved to shield colonies with magnetic barriers. Others deployed stabilizers, huge machines that drilled into moons and stations to hold them steady. The largest vessels spread energy nets designed to redirect radiation. These were tools built from human experience, tested on their own harsh world. Now they were used to guard another people. The Zeral watched from their command halls as the humans moved with surprising boldness. Where Zeral ships had fled, human ships pressed closer to the storm. Where Zeral engineers had panicked, human crews worked with calm voices and quick hands. Among the Zeral was a young council aide named Talai. She stood behind Elder Sana as she watched the humans on the display. Talai whispered, "They do not fear the storm." Sana answered softly, "They have lived with storms like this on their own world. To them, danger is part of life. That is why they are called Deathworlders. And that is why they are here when no one else is." Hours passed as the humans worked. At times their ships shook as the storm struck harder. A supply craft was nearly lost when its shield failed, but another vessel quickly moved to shield it until repairs were made. Every time a problem rose, the humans adapted. They did not give up, and they did not retreat. Admiral Ryan remained in constant contact with both his fleet and the Zeral Council. His words were simple but strong. Hold steady. We are with you. We will not let you fall. For the Zeril people, those words carried power. Families huddled in shelters listening to the human signals. They knew the storm was not yet over, but they also knew they were no longer alone. On the bridge of the Aurora, Commander Hale looked at the readings. Admiral, the next wave of the storm is coming. It is stronger than the last. If it reaches the core stations, they will not hold. Ryan did not hesitate. Then we will hold for them. Signal the fleet. Prepare for the wave. Engines roared. Shields glowed brighter. Magnetic stabilizers dug deeper into rock and metal. Every crew member braced for what was coming. As the storm wave struck, the sky itself seemed to split. Energy rolled across the system like a flood. Zeril ships pulled back, but the humans did not. Their vessels locked into formation, each guarding the other. Where one ship struggled, another gave support. Where one shield bent, another reinforced it. From the Zeril homeworld, the people watched in awe. Their screens showed human ships outlined against the glowing tide. They looked small compared to the storm, yet they stood firm. Talai's eyes were wide as she whispered, "They are not like us. They are not like anyone. They fight the storm as if it is only another task." Elder Sana placed a hand on her shoulder. "No, child. They do not fight it. They endure it. That is their gift. That is their strength." The storm raged, but the human fleet endured. And in that moment, the Zeril began to believe the storm did not end with one wave. It came again and again, each strike heavier than the last. Every moment tested the human fleet. On the flagship Aurora, Admiral Ryan stood tall, his hands resting on the command rail. His eyes never left the screens that showed colonies and stations swaying under the pull of the storm. "Report," he said firmly. Commander Hale checked the readings. "Outer Colony 3 has lost balance. Its orbit is slipping. If it falls further, it will break apart." "Signal the engineers," Ryan ordered. "Deploy stabilizers. We cannot lose them." At once, a group of smaller human ships broke formation and rushed toward the failing colony. The Zeril watched from their own command screens as the humans moved. Great machines were released from their cargo bays. They unfolded in space like wings and drilled into the colony's surface. Power flowed into them, anchoring the station against the wild drag of the storm. The Zeril Council gasped as the station's fall slowed. It shook and groaned, but it held. Elder Sana whispered, "They brought tools we have never seen." Young Talai, standing beside her, leaned forward. "They did not wait for us to tell them what to do. They already knew." Indeed, the humans acted with speed born from long experience. On their own homeworld, they had faced quakes, floods, and storms without end. They had learned to adapt, to build, and to rebuild. Now they used that same knowledge for the Zeril. But the storm had more to give. Hours later, alarms rang across the Aurora. "Admiral," Hale called out, "radiation levels are rising near Colony 5. Their shields are failing." Ryan's voice remained calm. "Send the protective nets. Reinforce their shields with ours." Another set of human ships moved. They carried huge energy nets, woven from metals and magnetic fields. When released, they spread out like glowing sails. These nets caught part of the storm's radiation and redirected it. The Zeril had never imagined such a design, but here it was, holding back energy that should have destroyed them. Still, even with every new device, the danger grew. Whole skies turned white as energy storms crashed against shields. Stations trembled, and some began to split at the edges. On the Aurora, engineers worked without pause. They adjusted shields, rerouted power, and repaired damage. The crew moved as one, their voices steady though the storm shook every deck. "Talai, watching from the Zeril Council chamber, could not look away from the human fleet on the screens. She whispered to Elder Sana, "They do not give up, even when the storm breaks everything around them." Sana nodded. "This is their way. It is why they are different from the rest of us." Yet not all Zeril were convinced. Counselor Rill spoke with doubt. "They cannot hold forever. Every moment the storm grows. What happens when even they cannot stand?" Elder Sana turned to him. "Then they will fall trying, while others fled without lifting a hand. That is what makes them worthy." Back on the Aurora, the strain was clear. Power flickered. Shields strained. Even Admiral Ryan felt the weight of the task. He stood silently for a moment, then gave his command. "Prepare the core probes." Commander Hale turned with surprise. "Admiral, those are untested. We built them for trial, not for a storm of this size." Ryan's eyes remained steady. "We came because they asked. We must give everything we have." The order was carried out. From the fleet, a set of massive probes was launched into the very heart of the storm. Each probe carried sensors and stabilizers meant to map the storm's flow and redirect part of its force. If they worked, the storm could be weakened. If they failed, the loss would be great. The Zeril Council held their breath as the probes entered the glowing core. At first nothing happened. Then, slowly, the storm shifted. The violent currents spread wider, their pull less direct. Colonies that had been near collapse steadied, if only for a moment. The council chamber erupted in gasps. Talai smiled with shining eyes. "They did it. They touched the storm itself." But Admiral Ryan did not smile. He knew it was only a beginning. The storm had been slowed, not stopped. More waves were coming, stronger than before. On the Aurora, Hale spoke the thought aloud. "We bought time. No more. The hardest part is still ahead." Ryan gave a slow nod. "Then we will stand again when it comes. That is the task we chose." The humans had done what others thought impossible. They had held the storm, even if only for a time. They had steadied colonies, shielded stations, and reached into the heart of the danger itself. The Zeril, who once thought the humans wild and strange, now began to see them in a new light. They were not reckless. They were resolute. They were the ones who endured when all others fled. And as the next great wave of the storm gathered in the dark, both humans and Zeril knew one truth: the task before them was impossible. But together, they would face it. The storm had grown larger than anyone had imagined. Its glowing waves stretched across the system, wrapping colonies in swirling currents of energy. Ships that had entered earlier trembled as their shields bent under the force. Even the humans felt the pressure, but they did not retreat. On the bridge of the flagship Aurora, Admiral Ryan watched every reading. His hands rested lightly on the rail, and his eyes were calm. Commander Hale stood beside him, tension visible in his posture. "Admiral, the storm is stronger than our calculations. If we do not act, the outer colonies may not survive." Ryan nodded slowly. "Then we act. This is what we came for. Signal the fleet. All ships, prepare for the central surge. Hold your positions. We will not leave a single colony unshielded." Orders spread across the fleet. Ships of every size moved with precision, positioning themselves in front of the struggling colonies. Magnetic stabilizers dug deep into moons and stations. Energy nets unfurled like glowing sails, catching some of the storm's power and redirecting it into space. The Zeril watched in awe. Elder Sana could hardly believe her eyes. They face the storm without fear. They do not retreat even when everything around them shakes. Talai whispered beside her, "They are not just helping us. They are showing us what it means to endure." The first wave of the central surge struck the human fleet. Shields flared as energy collided against them. Ships rocked under the pressure, alarms rang across the decks, but the humans remained steady. Each crew member worked with calm determination. They adjusted shields, repaired systems, and communicated instructions clearly and without panic. On the colony screens, the Zeril saw the impossible happening. A station that should have been ripped apart held its shape. Another that teetered on the edge of destruction remained stable. The humans had become a shield between life and the storm. Commander Hale leaned closer to Admiral Ryan. "We cannot hold forever. The next surge may overwhelm us." Ryan's voice was quiet but firm. "Then we stand. If we hold even a little longer, we give them a chance. That is all that matters." The storm raged on. Lightning-like energy arced through space. Clouds of glowing particles swirled like ocean waves. Yet the human fleet pressed forward, each ship supporting another. Where one shield weakened, another reinforced it. Where one stabilizer failed, another took its place. The Zeril began to understand. Their own technology was powerful, but it was nothing compared to the endurance of the humans. These beings did not fight because they had to. They fought because they would not abandon others. Elder Sana turned to Talai. "Look at them. They do not just survive. They endure for others. That is why they are called Deathworlders. That is why they are unique." Talai watched the displays, her eyes wide. "They are teaching us to stand. Even when we fear, we can try. We can endure." The surge passed, but the storm did not weaken. Another wave gathered behind it, stronger and brighter. Alarms sounded across the Zeril colonies. People hid in shelters, bracing for destruction. Admiral Ryan walked along the bridge, speaking to his crew with steady voice. "This is the moment. We do not step back. Hold your positions. Protect them. We are their shield, and we will not fail." The human fleet surged forward again, holding formation. The central ships absorbed the first strike of the wave while the outer vessels shielded the colonies. Every crew member knew their task. Every hand was steady. Every mind focused. From the Zeril homeworld, the council watched in silence. Stations trembled, but the humans did not. The impossible was happening. The storm, which had seemed unstoppable, met a force no one had expected. Talai whispered softly, "They do not fight for glory. They fight because it is right." Sana nodded. "And that is why they endure. That is why they came. Not for reward, not for fear of failure, but because someone asked for help." Hours passed, and the wave finally began to fade. The colonies, though shaken, remained intact. Ships that had nearly been lost returned to formation. The human fleet held firm, still glowing with energy and determination. For the first time in many cycles, the Zeril felt hope. They had faced despair and watched their world tremble, yet here were beings from a distant star who stood strong when no one else would. Admiral Ryan looked across the bridge, his eyes steady. "We have held this wave. The storm is not over, but we are not defeated. Together, we will continue. We will endure." And so, in the heart of the storm, humans and Zeril saw a new truth. Courage was not about strength alone. It was about endurance, care, and the willingness to stand for others. The storm raged, but the human fleet endured. The Zeril began to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, their world would survive. The storm had raged for cycles, but slowly, the human fleet began to change the tide. Every strike of energy that had threatened the Zeril colonies now met careful resistance. Ships worked together, shields overlapping, stabilizers holding stations steady. Where fear once ruled, courage now spread. On the Aurora, Admiral Ryan watched as readings shifted. "The storm is weakening in some areas," he said quietly to Commander Hale. "We need to push forward. We cannot leave any colony at risk." Hale nodded, eyes focused on the displays. "It is working. The probes are stabilizing the storm's currents. The colonies that nearly collapsed are now holding. Ryan's face remained calm. Good. But this is only the beginning. We must continue. Every moment counts. Elsewhere, the Zeril Council saw hope where there had been despair. Elder Sana stood beside Talai, pointing to the colony readings. Look. The humans are teaching us not only to endure, but to act. We can join them. We must join them. Talai's eyes widened. We can help. Yes, Sana replied. We have the knowledge of our stations. They have the courage and tools. Together, we can succeed. For the first time, Zeril engineers moved beyond fear. They worked with the humans, guiding ships to precise positions, adjusting energy flows, and repairing stations with new techniques. Human crews welcomed the guidance, adapting quickly and sharing their own methods. In the center of the storm, probes launched by humans and Zeril now worked as one. They measured the energy, redirected dangerous currents, and held colonies in balance. The impossible task, once seeming like a hopeless struggle, began to feel achievable. Commander Hale watched the screens, amazement in his voice. Admiral, the storm is changing. It is losing some of its strength. The colonies that were at the edge are holding steady. Ryan nodded, his calm presence giving strength to his crew. This is what we came for. But we cannot stop. Keep working. Every wave we hold now makes the next easier. On the Zeril homeworld, children peeked from shelters. They had never seen humans before, but now they watched glowing ships steady entire colonies. Some whispered in excitement, "They are saving us. They are brave." Elder Sana turned to Talai. We feared the storm would take everything. We doubted our allies. But the humans have shown us what can be done when we do not give up. This is the moment we must remember. The storm's largest wave approached. It was brighter, stronger, and filled the sky with glowing arcs of energy. Many Zeril feared the end, but the humans did not flinch. Every ship, every crew member, held steady. Ryan walked along the Aurora's bridge, speaking to his crew. We are not just surviving. We are leading. Every station, every life, depends on us. Stand firm. Protect them. The wave hit, but this time, the humans and Zeril were ready. Shields absorbed the energy, stabilizers held the colonies steady, and probes redirected the worst of the storm. The wave crashed, then broke apart without destroying a single station. On the observation screens, the Zeril gasped. Entire colonies that had seemed doomed now stood firm. Families began to emerge from shelters. Hope returned like sunlight after darkness. Talai's eyes were bright with amazement. They did it. They made the impossible happen. Elder Sana smiled. No, Talai. We did it. They led, we followed. Together, we stood against the storm. Commander Hale looked at Admiral Ryan, still calm. Admiral, it seems we have turned the tide. The storm will not defeat the colonies now. Ryan nodded, voice steady. Yes. But we must finish the work. Push the remaining probes. Strengthen the outer stations. We cannot leave anything at risk. For hours, humans and Zeril worked as one. Every effort built upon the last. Slowly, the storm's energy weakened. It no longer threatened to destroy, but only to sway and shift. From the Zeril homeworld, Elder Sana addressed her council. We have seen courage in a form we did not understand. We have learned from the humans that hope is stronger than fear. We will survive. We will endure. Talai looked up at the sky, glowing with scattered storm energy. They did not come for reward. They came because we asked for help. And they stayed, no matter what. Sana placed a hand on her shoulder. That is what makes them special. That is why they are human. As the fleet held steady, the storm finally began to weaken. Light replaced glowing arcs, calm returned to space, and colonies, though shaken, remained intact. For the first time in cycles, the Zeril allowed themselves to smile. Their world was not lost. And far across the stars, the human fleet prepared to finish its work, leaving behind not destruction, but hope. The storm had finally begun to fade. Its glowing waves no longer threatened the Zeril colonies. Space that had been alive with energy now shimmered calmly, and the stations and settlements stood intact. Humans and Zeril alike took a moment to breathe, knowing the worst had passed. On the flagship Aurora, Admiral Ryan walked the bridge, observing his fleet. Every ship had endured, every crew member had worked without hesitation, and the impossible had been accomplished. Commander Hale came beside him. "It is over. All colonies are safe. The storm will not return in this form for cycles." Ryan nodded quietly. "It is not just our work. The Zeril learned from us, and we learned from them. Together, we held what seemed impossible. That is the true victory." Back on the Zeril homeworld, Elder Sana addressed her people. Her voice, calm and strong, carried across the council chamber. "We have been saved, not by chance, not by our own strength alone, but by beings who came when others would not. Humans, the Deathworlders, stood with us in our darkest hours. They have shown us what courage, endurance, and care truly mean." Taelai, the young council aide, looked around at her fellow Zeril. "We doubted them at first. We feared their ways. But now I see they are not reckless. They are brave in a way we can only aspire to." Families walked through streets that had been threatened but now were safe. Children pointed to the skies, imagining humans traveling across the stars, standing against a storm no one else dared to face. Elders spoke of a courage that was different from their own, and slowly, admiration replaced fear. In orbit, human ships began to prepare for departure. Admiral Ryan stood on the bridge, looking back at the world they had helped save. He spoke to the Zeril Council through the communication link. "We have done what we came to do. Your people are safe. We will return home, but remember this. Courage is not about power. It is about standing for others when it matters most." Elder Sana bowed her head in gratitude. "You came because we asked. You stayed because it was right. That is more than we could have hoped for. You are not just visitors. You are friends, and your deeds will be remembered for generations." Taelai's voice trembled slightly. "I want to remember. I want to be like them someday. Calm, strong, and willing to help when it is needed." Ryan's voice, calm and kind, echoed back. "You already can. Every being has the choice to stand. We simply acted when we were asked. That is what it means to be human." The Zeril Council watched as the human fleet assembled into formation. Engines hummed softly, a song of endurance and purpose. The humans had not come for fame, not for reward, not for praise. They had come because someone needed them, and they had stayed until the task was done. As the fleet moved away, the Zeril looked to the stars differently. They had once feared humans as wild and unpredictable. Now they understood. Humans were special not only for surviving harsh worlds, but for facing dangers for the sake of others. They turned challenges into opportunities to protect, to endure, and to inspire. On the Aurora, Admiral Ryan watched the Zeril planets grow smaller in the distance. He turned to his crew. "We have done well. Remember this, not as a story of fear or danger, but as a story of courage and hope. We are humans. This is what we do." The crew nodded quietly, pride shining in their eyes. Every pilot, engineer, and officer understood that they had been part of something greater than themselves. They had faced a storm the galaxy feared, and they had endured. Back on the Zeril homeworld, life slowly returned to normal. Cities rebuilt, colonies strengthened, and children learned the story of the Deathworlders who came in their hour of need. Talai smiled as she watched young Zeril practice new ways to stabilize their settlements. She whispered to herself, "We are stronger now. We learned because they showed us how." Elder Sana placed a hand on her shoulder. "And that is the gift they gave us. Not just safety, but knowledge, courage, and hope. Never forget it." Across the stars, the human fleet traveled home. The adventure had ended, but the lesson remained. Courage is not measured by the world's one rules, but by the lives one protects. Endurance is not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. And true strength comes from helping others when they cannot stand alone. As Earth's sun grew larger in the view screens, Admiral Ryan looked to his crew one last time. "We are humans. We do not turn away. We do not give up. And that is why we endure." The Deathworlders had arrived. They had faced fury, and they had turned it into hope. The galaxy would remember this day, not for the storm, but for the courage of humanity.